Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the WLBB Community Voice Program on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. I'm your host today, Sara Claudia Tillman, and as always, I hope everybody is having a wonderful week and a wonderful start to your Wednesday so far. I'm excited for today's interview because it not only is going to inspire us and show us the faith and courage of an individual, but the faith and courage of a family and really a whole community as well. So everybody, join me in welcoming Tyler Duffey to Community Voice. Thank you, Tyler, for being here with us today.
Of course, it was a no-brainer when you asked me. I was like, oh, of course, yeah, I'll definitely join you.
Well, I know Tyler's story, and I'm excited for all of our listeners to hear it as well. But why don't you go ahead and just start off by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you?
Okay, I won't dive too deep, so I don't take any of your questions from you. But I'm born and raised in Carrollton, Georgia. My parents are Eddie and Sara Duffey. Grandparents are James and Irene Duffey, and then on my mom's side, Thomas and Josephine Denny. I am the youngest of three. I graduated from Central High School in 2004, so you can do the math and figure out how old I am now. And then I also graduated from the University of West Georgia with my undergrad and my MBA as well.
And what do you do today? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so what do I quote unquote do? I'm a realtor here in town, but what I love to do is give back to the community. Take the time that I'm able to use with my career in real estate, the flexibility that I have to be able to work with a lot of nonprofits here in town, and try to give back to the community that gave back to me pretty much my whole life.
Yeah. So. And you've got a wedding coming up, so congrats on that.
You too. You're gonna beat me by a couple months. Yeah. So I'm excited for y'all.
Well, we're excited for y'all too.
Thank you.
So let's take it back several years. You already told us about how old you are, so let's take it back several years.
Several, just a few.
And you, as a child, received news that really no person should have to hear, but especially not a child. So tell us how old you were when you got that news and what exactly that entailed.
Yeah, so I was 5 years old, and I woke up one morning and had this knot on my inner thigh, and it was painful. I couldn't really walk, and so I went to my parents and told them about it. We had gone to the doctor that morning, and test results didn't show anything. So we actually had gone on a trip to Colorado after the test came back, that everything was fine. And so while I was out there, I got even more sick. And when we got back, ran some more tests, and were rushed to Eggleston Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and received news that I had leukemia, a type of childhood cancer. And I was young enough where I didn't fully grasp what was going on at that point in time. It was really, my parents that knew what that diagnosis meant, but didn't really know what was about to ensue.
Yeah. And did they try to explain it to you in any certain way?
I'm sure they did. Like I said, 5 years old, I don't really remember that much, and that's probably a really big blessing that I don't have that much memory from it.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of times when bad things happen, it is on the parents. Like even me, when I lost my sight, I was kind of out of it for a lot of those first few days and weeks. So right. I know it was harder on my parents than it was for me at the beginning, and I'm sure that was a situation you were in. Like I can't really remember anything from when I was 5, but are there any little, like, looking back, bits and pieces or like glimpses that you remember?
Yeah, there are some good days that I remember, and some bad days. One of the good memories that I have is we had some PGA Tour players come into Eggleston one day, and they set up a miniature putt course, and one of the PGA guys was following me around and helping me, and he told me to close my eyes and I was going to make a hole in one. And you know what? I did. But we had some newspaper clippings from stuff like that. I got to be really good friends with Sid Bream from the Braves. Anybody that's a Braves fan remembers the Sid slide to win the championship. So just some really good memories that, in the midst of the darkness, there was still good stuff. Good stuff to remember. We won't talk about the bad though.
Yeah. Well, you received that news, you and your family. What were kind of the first steps towards, recovery and healing?
Yeah. So at that point in time, so that was good grief. That was 30 years ago. So yes, I'm 35 years old now. Really, the only treatment at that point was chemotherapy. So we went to Eggleston in Atlanta and went through chemotherapy. There were hospital stays that were involved there, inpatient, outpatient operations, a lot of, spinal taps and stuff like that to check my blood levels and make sure that the chemo was doing its job. Hair loss. I've shaved my head now. Back then it was not a choice, but so that was the first step, was the chemotherapy, and it took us probably right at a year for me to be in remission. And at that point we were monitoring to make sure that it stayed away, but it didn't.
Yeah, and we'll kind of get to that next step, but I don't know, being so young, and like we said, I think it's a blessing maybe that you can't remember a lot of it. And I'm curious, did it take a long time for your parents to be able to rehash it? And like when you got old enough where you wanted to hear all the details and everything, was that kind of like a slow process?
Yeah, I think it got to a point where, once I got old enough to fully comprehend what it meant. We had some discussions, and we still do from time to time. My sister and I were talking the other day, and she brought up something, like literally, this was probably a month ago, that she brought up something that I had no idea about, and I was like, did that really happen?
Wow.
So still to this day, there's stuff that you find out that was going on. So.
Yeah, that happens to me too. I mean, it seems like for my family, it's always around that anniversary of kind of when everything happened, and it took us several years to even be able to talk about it a little bit. But it's strange when you go through these things that happen to you, and you don't even know all the details.
Right.
But like we said, I think sometimes that can be a blessing, and
Absolutely.
that can be kind of God showing us at that moment what we can handle and what we can't. So,
and then when you do have the time and ability to reminisce and talk about it, it brings even more to light for you to realize how God has brought you through some things that you went through. So
yeah, and it can definitely be healing to talk about that and get it all kind of out in the open. But we are going to take our first break to hear from our sponsors, Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy, and we will be back on Community Voice with Tyler Duffey to hear more about his journey with childhood cancer.
Travel, get-togethers, Sunday morning worship. COVID-19 has almost put a stop to our way of life. Vaccination is our best shot at getting back to normal. The COVID-19 vaccine is based on more than a decade of research. Trials show it's safe and can provide up to 95% protection when you've received both doses. Tanner is committed to making the vaccine as widely available as possible, giving you a shot at getting back to life. Until then, keep wearing your mask, washing your hands, and avoid gatherings. Learn more and get updates at tanner.org/vaccine.
Oak Mountain Academy would like to invite you to join us for our 33rd Annual Spring Gala. This live virtual event will be held on Saturday, March 20th, beginning at 6 p.m. Professional superstar auctioneer Seth Weiner will be our host for the evening. Seth will guide us through the live and silent auction portions of the evening and facilitate a variety of games where the winners take home prizes. If you love a good scavenger hunt, think you can name that tune, or are a bingo champion, you won't want to miss this free event. Register today at oakmountain.us for a virtual evening of fun, games, and entertainment.
Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice program on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Sara Claudia Tillman here with our guest, Tyler Duffey, who's sharing about his journey and experience through childhood cancer. So when we left before the break, you kind of alluded to what came next after your first round with chemo, and you thought you were in remission, but then it came back.
Yeah, so once you're in remission, you kind of do periodic tests to make sure for a certain amount of time before they'll consider you quote-unquote cured. One of the tests came back and showed that I had relapsed with the exact same leukemia, but this time it was in my bone marrow. So this was when I was 7 years old, so that was 28 years ago. It's hard. And so at that point, really, there wasn't a lot of bone marrow transplant advancements done, and it was a new kind of medical practice. Atlanta, none of the hospitals had started doing that at that point. So we were blessed with a wonderful doctor in Atlanta that really took us under our wing and discussed different options that we had, and it ultimately led us to Seattle, Washington, where we underwent a bone marrow transplant and radiation. God working in his mysterious ways as he always does. We were blessed that my brother was a 100% match to be my donor. So we moved out there for a bone marrow transplant. I think we moved out there in like April or May the year that we went out there, and came home early October that same year.
Wow. So you and your family just packed up everything and moved.
Yeah. So my brother and sister are both a year and a half and 3 years older than me. My mom was a school teacher. My dad owned Sportsplex at the time. And we uprooted, took the whole family, and made a memory out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing what parents and not only parents, siblings will be willing to do. When a family member's going through something like that, and it would be interesting to see kind of their perspective, because it
Right.
was something that didn't just impact you, it impacted all of your lives, because you all had that experience where you kind of had to uproot and change everything, and I'm sure that was hard for them.
Yeah, I've actually had some conversations with Lauren and Parker, and not rudely saying it, but they've told me it was difficult. We were 9 and 11 years old when we moved out there, and they had their friends. Parker had baseball. Lauren had her group of friends that she was used to being around, and like you said, we uprooted and really took that away from them at that point. But like you said, when you're a family, you do what you have to do to get through it, and God blessed us with the abilities to be able to do that. A lot of people don't have the ability and aren't as fortunate as I was as a child and as a family to be able to do what we did.
Yeah, it makes you definitely thankful. So what was it like? Like, I know you were going through treatments and it was hard and it was scary, but was it kind of like a prolonged vacation for y'all over there? Like, did you do a lot of sightseeing, or was it more like, okay, this is our home?
Well, I think that for mom and dad, they were in the hospital with me. They would take turns each night who stayed with me. Lauren and Parker were put into a school with other siblings of cancer patients or patients with illness. So they were going through the same things, but when there was time, we would go to Mount Rainier or Mount St. Helens, or go down to the Puget Sound and go to the Pike Place Fish Market. Everybody knows about the fish market in Seattle. So, yes, we do have some good memories that were made while we were out there too. So, like I said, that it's not all bad.
Yeah, it's so weird. I've gone through some medical treatments too that took us to different countries for 3-4 weeks at a time, and it's interesting. I think when you come back from those, people want to hear all the medical, the sciencey stuff, but really what stays in your head are those good memories.
Yes.
I mean, getting to go out and explore new places, and again, I think that's God giving us a way to kind of get through it and look back and say, okay, it wasn't all bad.
Absolutely. We still go travel to Seattle, so it was obviously, we made some fond enough memories where we want to go back. It's not just that's where we had the medical treatments kind of situation. So.
And speaking of the treatments, do you remember any of it really at all? I mean, you were still so young, only 7, but what was that experience like?
I do remember some of it. At that point, I was a couple of years older than when I went through the chemo. I remember more of the hospital stays. I remember some disgusting mouthwash that I had to use, and it made me want to throw up every time I used it. So, but yeah, I do remember more of the treatments, but like you said, I'm also blessed with the memories of being able to get out of the hospital and go see what the Pacific Northwest had to offer, a place that a lot of us don't get to travel to.
Yeah, and like you said, the battle finally ended with your brother being a perfect match. So how old was he at the time?
Let's see. I was 7. Parker is a year and a half older than me, so he was 9.
Wow. And was it ever a question, like with your parents, did they have to sit him down and talk to him about being, because I know they had to do like a test, right, to see if he was a match. How did all of that kind of go? So
we tested our entire family. When I say entire, my parents and my brother and sister, and the test was just some simple blood work to see what kind of blood type and how close of a match it was, and that's where we figured out that Parker was the perfect match for us. From my understanding, I don't think we had to bribe Parker into saving my life. I think that he was used to me, throwing the baseball to him out in the front yard, so he didn't want to lose that. But no, he was a gracious donor, and I tell him more times than I can imagine that I appreciate him and am forever in debt to him for what he did for me.
Yeah, I'm sure it took a lot of explanation, just explaining what he was going to be doing and the implications of it, but I'm sure once he understood, there was no question. I mean, that's what you do for family, and we already see from your whole story how close your family was and how willing they were to do whatever it took. And we'll take one more break, and then when we come back, I know we had mentioned the community support, so I'm excited to get into that because I know that was such a big part of your whole journey. So we'll take one more break to hear from our sponsors, Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy, and be back on Community Voice with Tyler Duffey.
Travel, get-togethers, Sunday morning worship. COVID-19 has almost put a stop to our way of life. Vaccination is our best shot at getting back to normal. The COVID-19 vaccine is based on more than a decade of research. Trials show it's safe and can provide up to 95% protection when you've received both doses. Tanner is committed to making the vaccine as widely available as possible, giving you a shot at getting back to life. Until then, keep wearing your mask, washing your hands, and avoid gatherings. Learn more and get updates at tanner.org/vaccine.
Oak Mountain Academy would like to invite you to join us for our 33rd Annual Spring Gala. This live virtual event will be held on Saturday, March 20th, beginning at 6 p.m. Professional superstar auctioneer Seth Weiner will be our host for the evening. Seth will guide us through the live and silent auction portions of the evening and facilitate a variety of games where the winners take home prizes. If you love a good scavenger hunt, think you can name that tune, or are a bingo champion, you won't want to miss this free event. Register today at oakmountain.us for a virtual evening of fun, games, and entertainment.
Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice program on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Sara Claudia Tillman here with Tyler Duffey, sharing about his journey with childhood cancer, which we've heard is not only your journey, it was really your whole family. I mean, they uprooted themselves, they moved. Your brother donated his bone marrow to save your life. I mean, it's just an amazing story of how we can all come together. And it wasn't just your family. You guys got a lot of support from the community as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, with my dad owning his own business, we were blessed with management at that time that could, run his business while we were, across the country, about as far away as you could get, and still be in the U.S. But we also had, people that put on numerous fundraisers for us while we were in Seattle, and in Atlanta, that helped us pay for a lot of our medical costs. We had people that connected us with people in Seattle while we were out there that they knew. So we had basically a community away from Carrollton as well, and introduced us to a church out there, which goes into a different part of the story of God working miracles in any situation that He puts us in, and it was just the prayers. The people would come visit us in Atlanta, come visit us in Seattle, and it was just we could not have done it without this Carrollton community.
It's amazing to see when things happen how much our community rallies around. It reminds me of Chase McDaniel too, yes. And how they all rallied around him and his family, and that's so important.
It is, and we've got. I hate that it takes some dark times for us to see how great our community is, but in those times, I don't know that there's a better community out there that really rallies around each other and supports each other the way that they do.
Yeah, I'm definitely thankful for that. Yeah. And, it does give hope, too, when we go through, times of unrest, times that we've been going through as a nation as a whole, world, but seeing how our small little community of Carrollton, I mean, we drop everything and we help each other, and I think that's so important.
We do, and I think, we saw that a lot within the community during this whole pandemic issue is, there's a lot of concern for our local businesses, and the health and wellness of our community as well. And we saw some people do some great things in the height of a scared time as we go through COVID. So I got to take a step back. So one of my favorite things that this community did was the day that we came back from Seattle. We used to live on Oak Grove Road, so coming off of 27, we took a ride onto Oak Grove, and there was a yellow ribbon, and we're like, okay, well, what is this yellow ribbon? What's that for? And as we got further down the road, there was more yellow ribbons. Then we started seeing the road lined with people. So they had a welcoming committee, just like people lining Oak Grove Road all the way to our house, and that is a memory that my family and I still talk about to this day. So it was just another example of this community being as awesome as they are. Yeah,
just seeing everybody show up and knowing, while you're going through all this, there were people praying and even people to welcome you. It's like all the drive-by things people have been doing these days.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I know when you beat cancer and when it was all said and done, it had been hard and, physically and emotionally left some impacts on you as you grew up and even into adulthood. So what are some things, physical or emotional, that you would like to share that you still deal with even today?
Honestly, I've kind of pushed the negative emotions to the side, and I'm grateful for where I am today. And I'm thankful for the people that rallied around us. To me, it's taking the positives out of what we've gone through, and I know that you're doing the same thing today. With your podcast, your speaking engagements, your book. God puts us through things for a reason, and when we're in the middle of it, it's hard to see. It's hard to understand. All right, God, well, why do I have cancer at 5 years old? Why are you doing this? Why are we moving to Seattle? I've been able to take what I've learned and make it a passion of mine to be able to, give back to the people that are in this community. But also, I think one of the biggest things that he used my story for, and it's not my story, it's God's, is when we were in Seattle, my parents went to a church out there that they absolutely fell in love with. There was nothing like it when we got back to Carrollton. It was more of your contemporary service, the live bands on a Sunday that, here in the South, we were very traditional, and there's nothing wrong with being traditional. But they fell in love with that type of worship and that type of church. And, now 20-something years later, Southern Hills is going strong, and it wouldn't have happened without us moving to Seattle. So God takes what he puts you through, or what he allows you to go through, and really makes the best of it.
That's amazing. I love that story, because you look at Southern Hills now, and I mean, it's huge, and they're doing so many things for our community, and it all kind of started from that trip to Seattle. Absolutely. Because of your cancer. And I think when you guys got back to Carrollton, it just started out like in a gym, right? You were doing like little services. Your parents were in the gym, and it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, so it started in a basement with 3 families. Then we moved to, I'm trying to remember exactly how it goes. I think that we met in Sportsplex for a little while. Then we moved to Carrollton High School's auditorium, the old auditorium, not the new fancy one. But and then we continued to grow. We were out on 113 at what we call the chicken farm. It was next to the chicken farm out there. And now we have City Station, where it's a community complex, and we meet there on Wednesdays for youth, Thursday night services, Sunday services. So, and ultimately it serves the community and gives them a place to call their own as well.
And you're right with what you said. When you're going through it, it's so hard to see God working. But looking back now and saying, wow, all this, lack of better words, came from that hard situation.
Yes.
So it's just amazing when we're obedient and when we can, allow God, kind of step back and allow God to work what he can do.
Yep.
Well, what kind of advice would you give to somebody going through something similar, whether it's a child facing cancer and just the confusion of it all, or parents and family members?
I'll tell you, when you ask me that question, the thing that stands out the most to me is, if you're a parent of a child going through something like this, my parents did an amazing job of being strong in front of me. Now, I know that they had times of emotional outcry, and they held those and did it behind closed doors, not in front of me, because it is a psychological thing for the person that's going through it. And I think that if you're blessed to have the community around you, rely on them. Don't be too prideful to not allow people to help. My fiance's mother actually has a saying, don't steal the blessings that God has allowed me to provide. So people have a servant's heart, and people want to help you. You've got to allow them to help you. And I think that's some of the biggest things, is just positivity. Believe that God's going to get you through it. Yeah. It's easy to question God, but just know, hey, there's a reason that you've got this going on right now.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I know it's never an easy thing to do, but I know our listeners got a lot out of it. And thank you all for tuning in and listening.
Thanks for having me.